Yeah, that was nonsense,
All right. So,
as advertised.
hello and welcome to JudgeCast. This is episode 355. I'm one of your hosts, Bryan Perlman, and I am joined this evening, afternoon, morning drive to work by the one and only Marcos Sanchez.
Hello, everybody. Weird to come
And,
first.
yeah, it is a little bit weird, caught you off guard. And we do not have a Charles today, but in place of Charles, we have a special guest, one Mr. CJ Shrader, who was a frequent guest on this podcast up until 2017. Hi, CJ.
Hello, hello. Yes, I'm a JudgeCast host no more. It's a little Spider-Man reference.
Love it.
Look at me doing it. Yeah, should I talk about myself a little bit? Y'all really get into it. I didn't know.
Yeah, we don't have the banter.
We
So
usually,
just for the
I'm used to
listeners
an
at
hour of
home,
banter.
we can do banter.
No, no, no.
The format's changed a little bit. So CJ is one of the JudgeCast OGs. Uh,
hmm
uh,
Uh, okay. I don't agree, but yeah, I am an older host of JudgeCast.
I'd call you an OG. Like you weren't the first, but you were definitely one of the most
No.
prominent early on.
you started with episode 32.
Yeah, well,
That's we're on episode 355 right now.
yeah. I saw that. That's wild.
Yeah. Yes. So CJ has come out of JudgeCast retirement to join us on this release notes episode because um, CJ loves to talk about flavor and and yeah, that is a thing this set's got going for it. All right, so CJ, do you want to tell us what you've been up to?
Yeah, I was gonna say if I could just give a brief intro, because I don't think a lot of people know who I am. I wouldn't expect them to. Yeah, I'm CJ Shrader. I was a host of Judge Cast apparently around episode 30 something. I thought it was like 100 and something, but okay. Um, Me and Jess were the ones who were like, "Hey, we like this podcast. We'd like to bring it back." And so we did, and then a few episodes later, we're like, "Hey, we want someone else on," and then we got Brian on, and then Brian never left. He's like an unwelcome house guest that just doesn't leave. Um, as my in my time as a judge, I was a level two judge. I know that means something totally different now, I think. Um, but I have just to give some of my credentials here. I stopped judging in 2017, and I really stopped playing Magic around then as well. It's only recently that I have taught some people at work how to play, and we just use some starter decks. But when it comes to the game itself, I've been involved with it in some form, even if it's just, looking at a few cards online here and there for 30 years now. I've always been a fan of Magic, but I just got a little tired of it for a while. And for a while, I mean 8 years. I stopped judging as well. I stopped judging, I stopped playing. I have not been totally up to date to the rules. I know that makes me a weird addition for this episode, which I don't think we've said is the release notes episode.
Yeah.
Am I spoiling something by saying that? I hope not. But
No.
I'd be like a Tom Holland over here. Um,
Everybody knows by
but
now that we're jumping into the silly Spider-Verse.
Yep.
yeah. So,
We are entering the Spider Verse, so we're gonna jump on in. A few
hmm
quick notes about this particular set that is unique to this set. Um, the cards on Arena are going to be different than the cards in paper. For whatever reason, and you can speculate, the Spider Man branded cards are not going to be appearing on Magic Online or Arena. They are instead going to have universe within versions with alternate names. That's
Yeah,
just a thing. We're not going to worry about those
I
cards
think they call this set Into the Omen Pass or Through the Omen Path,
through
something
the
like
Omen
that.
that
Paths.
sounds right.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's through the Omen Pass. Yep.
Yeah.
Fortunately, online doesn't need judges. Arena and Moto, at least not in from a rule standpoint. Paper does, and that's what we're going to prioritize. Also, something else that is unique about this set is that there are going to be welcome decks. Marcus, do you want to tell us about the welcome decks?
Yeah, so apparently they are creating Spider-Man cards that are not legal in standard, but just have some fun Spider-Man flavor in them to bring in all of the Marvel friends that want to now jump into this game because their favorite characters are on it. So they're going to have some welcome decks with some cards that are, again, not legal in standard, which is kind of a deviation. They've usually had welcome decks be standard legal. Kind of makes sense. For some reason they don't. Okay, sure, that's a choice. But they will still be legal in Legacy, Vintage, Commander, all those other formats, just not standard. And those are going to have the code SPE on them as opposed to SPM for the main set.
Yeah, the big thing here is if you've got for judges and employees of stores, if you are getting ready to sell someone who is, keen on getting some Spider-Man cards, get me cards about Spider-Man. And they are looking to get into it, please make them be aware that if they are getting a welcome deck, that they will not be able to play those cards in standard. Which, really, is anyone playing anything other than VV right now anyway?
No. It would have to be Spider VV at this point.
Hey, they saved that for the next Spider-Man set. Okay. So who... Yeah, go on.
Before we jump in, I'm curious, because you touched on this a little bit. I remember from my days as a baby judge listening to JudgeCast that CJ definitely was big into flavor. Is Spider-Man your kind of flavor?
Yes, great question. Two things is part of the reason I stopped was just I wasn't interested in the story anymore of Magic. And I know that that's not your question, but I do want to mention that since then I've gotten almost entirely caught back up because I'm just back. I'm back in. This is how it starts. Get the story, start teaching people at work. Now I'm on JudgeCast. This is a bad slope. But to your question about Spider-Man in particular, I have been a Marvel fan my entire life. I used to collect those the Marvel cards. I don't know if they have their own name. They were just like the first series of Marvel
the
cards when I was a kid. I still have
and the Fleer Flare.
Yeah, I know you're the card shop guy.
Yep.
They weren't Fleer, yeah, the other ones, but yeah, I used to collect those. I've seen all the Spider-Man movies. I like Spider-Man a lot. This set in particular, still, I watch a bunch of YouTubes. I used to call myself a Wikipedia comic book fan because I would go read Wikipedia summaries of all my favorite heroes. I don't really like reading comic books too much. Although I've been changing that a little bit lately too. But I also go watch YouTube summaries of plots. So yeah, I like Spider-Man. Oh, but one of the things that was wild about this set was like there's so many characters in here I've never heard of. Like we'll get to one like Hydro Man later. I've never even heard of this guy. He makes no sense.
Man.
Unlike Sandman, that guy makes sense.
Oh, I love that. So I'll give you a tip on where I'm coming from on this one, because for the longest time, I think my first or one of my first episodes on JudgeCast, I was brought in for the Lord of the Rings release notes. And I'm not a Lord of the Rings guy. Just never got super into it. Like I watched all the movies. A friend of mine in college forced me to watch all the extended edition through a weekend in college, and that was way too much for me at the time. But
yeah, it's too much. It's too much. Yeah,
way too much. But overall, I found a lot of these Universes Beyond sets, for the most part, have never really been that much of a click for me. Like the smaller secret layers, like the Princess Bride one, I was all about, but it was only 5 cards, so we never did a release notes on it. Until Spider-Man. I grew up watching the Spider-Man animated series Saturday mornings and just dorking out completely on Spider-Man. I was reading like the Maximum Carnage comic books. I was into everything Spider-Man around that time. So like Hydro Man, I actually think of it more of like I remember those episodes of Spider-Man from when I was a kid that had Hydro Man in there. That's where I'm coming from. I might have more enthusiasm in this one than I did for Lord of the Rings, or what was the last one we did? Final Fantasy, which I'd never played a Final Fantasy in my life. So
yeah,
hopefully we'll come with a little more enthusiasm this time around. How about you, Brian? Are you into the Spider-Verse?
Maybe a little bit. So I sold comics in the 90s. I worked at a store that sold comics in the 90s. So the whole Ben Riley, Venom Lethal Protector, Carnage. That was
Mm-hmm.
I was having conversations with kids and moms trying to sell them comics, and that was also the same era that like Image was coming out and Valiant and all that. So there was a lot of competition for the for shelves because we all
Sure.
know how well those Valiant comics ended up.
Yeah, the Valiant C MCU, right? Movie cinematic
Yeah,
universe. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, and then the Spider Verse really didn't know anything about it until the Sony movie came out with Miles Morales a couple of years back. Big fan of that.
Mm-hmm.
Love the Spider Man video games, like the
Oh
Sony
yeah.
ones, like
Yeah,
the
they're so good.
yeah. There's
They're
just something
so
about like
good.
swinging through the city that's very very cathartic.
Uh,
Oh yeah, I could waste hours
it's
doing
the only
that.
game.
Yes,
Yeah, it's the only game with fast travel that I don't use.
yes,
Yep. Same.
and
Like,
you can give finger guns.
You can.
Yes, you
Absolutely.
can. When you're just walking, I will say, swinging through the city, you look amazing as Spider Man. Walking down the street in your spider pajamas, giving finger guns, is slightly cringe. It's
That's just
just
Spider-Man 3, isn't it?
maybe we. Yeah, it is Spider-Man 3. Yeah, maybe we just don't talk about cards. We just talk about Spider-Man.
yeah. Let's just talk about Spider Man. The whole rest. No, no, no. We need to get started.
Welcome to
All right.
Spider-Cast.
Yes. So, all right. What do we want to talk about first? The new keyword abilities.
Wait, were you
Sure.
trying to segue? No, you just accidentally. Because you were talking about web slinging, which is the keyword ability.
It is
We would
podcast. CJ Shrader, Podcast Pro.
Podcast Pro.
Take it away, CJ.
Oh, me. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
why
You want
web
to
not?
start?
slinging is a new keyword ability. Um, and the reminder text for it, it has a web slinging and then a cost. So the reminder text says you may cast this spell for cost. If you also return a tapped creature you control to its owner's hand. I appreciate this first note in the notes. It's like ninjutsu, except if it isn't anything like it. This
Yeah.
stuff is a lot more helpful when you've played Magic in the last 8 years, but that's fine. Um, yeah, I still remember some things. So web slinging is it's an alternate cost, and you can tell because it says you may cast a spell for this. Instead of paying its cost. What that means is that you cannot use more than one alternate cost at a time. So if you have something that says you can play spells in your hand for free, and then the card also has web slinging. You can't play it for free and also return a tapped creature you control to its owner's hand. You can't try to do both at the same time. You can only do one of the two alternate costs. An alternate cost is still casting a card, so you still need to respect any timing rules around that. Like if it's a sorcery, you can't play it on your opponent's turn unless something's letting you. Trying not to read the notes verbatim, but if a permanent has an ability that triggers when a permanent leaves the battlefield. That trigger will occur while casting the spell, but be put on the stack after you finish casting what we told before that spell. So this goes back to the steps of casting a spell, which I'm sure you all have covered again since I've last been on. But
Once or twice.
yeah, I'm sure you have, and you should. You should. But the important thing is nothing. If a triggered ability triggers in the middle of casting a spell, and then of course that's when you're paying the cost, you can't put the triggered ability on the stack until someone would get priority, if I remember correctly, and um,
Yep.
and so that means that the trigger is going to wait until the next time
Yeah.
um, the spell is fully cast,
Yeah.
and of
So
course that trigger will resolve before that spell.
yeah, the trigger condition can happen at any time, even in the middle of casting a
Yes.
spell, but it can't go on the stack until someone would get priority, which is after you finish casting the spell.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
Yep.
Just hangs out in the waiting room with the state-based action robots and just
Yeah.
waits.
Mhm.
one thing that I do want to point out is a synergy with the warp mechanic from Edge of Eternities. So most of the cards with web slinging, the cost is cheaper to cast the spell. Okay, I think the vast majority of them, and warp is a ability that lets you cast a creature for cheaper, but then you exile it, at the end of turn. With web slinging, you can just bounce that warped creature back to your hand and reuse it again. So
Oh,
there
jeez.
is, yeah. Uh, so keep in mind though that you can't do that with creatures at least, because web slinging you still have to respect the timing restrictions. So instance you can cast at any time, creatures you can only cast during your turn. So you can't web sling in response to the the end of turn exile trigger unless your creature has flash or you're doing casting an instant. All right.
Big props to you, CJ, for pulling it off. It's almost like you never left. I thought it was going to be a little bit more chaotic, a little more mayhem, but you pulled it off nicely.
That's good. Okay, I can't even make my other point. That's good. All right, go ahead.
And that brings us to our next keyword ability, which is Mayhem. For this one, we're going to highlight a really cool looking card, actually. This is Swarm Being of Bees for 2 and a black. It has Flash, it has Flying, and it has Mayhem for a black. And it says, you may cast this card from your graveyard for black if you discarded it this turn. Timing rules still apply. So this is effectively a twist on that more classic mechanic of Madness that would let you cast a card as you were discarding it from your hand. With Mayhem, it's a little bit different. It's a little tweaked. It's another alternative cost that you can pay to cast a spell from your graveyard as long as the card with Mayhem was discarded this turn. Now, similar to web-sling as well, you have to respect all the timing rules for casting the spell, even if you end up discarding this on your opponent's turn. So if you discard Swarm, you could cast it for its Mayhem ability because it does have Flash. But if it didn't have Flash, you would be totally out of luck, and that would have been just another card in your discard pile and nothing you could do after that. Another question that has come up a lot, apparently, is if I cast a spell for its Mayhem cost and it gets countered, can I cast it again for its Mayhem cost? So, CJ, what would you think of that, just thinking about how you see this work?
Well, no. I mean, I know. That's still remember how some things work. Mainly because you've already cast it for its Mayhem cost, and you can only cast it for its Mayhem cost if you've discarded it, and so you've already done it, right? You would need to discard it again. You would need to, if it was not countered but returned to your hand and then discard it again, then you could cast it for your for its Mayhem cost again.
Yeah.
Basically, once it's changed zones, it loses its ability to track its mayhemedness.
That works.
Sure, that's a word.
Yeah, you like how I just made up a word there?
Yeah.
Does Aunt May have mayhem?
Yes.
Does she?
All right. What'd you say?
Does Aunt May have mayhem?
Oh.
But I feel like she should.
No, Aunt May does not have mayhem.
But if Spider-Ham has an Aunt May, would that be Mayhem?
It probably is.
CJ, you're normally the voice of reason on this podcast. Maybe. I don't know what happened, but here we are.
Well, I've changed.
Yeah. He's not responsible for keeping me on track anymore. I'm now the one that has to be responsible.
Yeah. Can I point out one other thing about this is, the flavor text, the reminder text specifically says timing rules still apply. And in the previous card, it didn't say timing rules still apply, even though timing rules do still apply. And I think that's just an important lesson that they put what they can in the reminder text, but it can't have everything in there. So just because you don't see something in the reminder text doesn't mean it doesn't apply.
Truth.
Yeah. It's very good. Yeah. Yes, the reminder text is just there to help remind you. It's not the actual full rules text.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we have a new keyword ability, which is just the infinity symbol. There is a new card called the Soul Stone. It is 1 and a black for a legendary artifact, Infinity Stone. It is indestructible. It has the ability tap, add a black. For 6 and a black, tap, exile a creature you control, and you harness the Soul Stone. Once harnessed, its infinity ability is active. And the affinity ability is just an ability that says, at the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay, a few things. Harnessed is a word that we haven't heard before, and that is a designation that a permanent can have once an ability instructs you to harness it. It has no special meaning and cannot be copied. Okay? Until it is harnessed. Now here is something that the release notes say. It says, until the card is harnessed, It doesn't have the ability listed after the infinity symbol. It also doesn't have that ability in zones other than the battlefield. All right, this is just from the release notes. We haven't seen the exact rules that translate that into actual CR. However, I believe it will function very, very similarly to the way max speed works from Aether Drift, if you remember that.
I don't. Yeah, I actually saw this card come through in spoilers because this is a big one. I don't understand. Um, is harness like? Is it a characteristic of the card? Is it a characteristic of you? Is it like being like
No,
if you harness this and then exile it and then bring it back, do you have to go through the steps to harness it again?
yeah. So
Okay.
if it goes away and then comes back, so harnessed is they've started putting out cards that just get designations, which aren't uh, uh, characteristics of the card. It's not like a copyable ability or like a key, it gains flying. It didn't gain harness. Okay. So they've started creating these things called characteristics. Do you remember with Theros
Yeah,
Monstrous?
monstrous.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Putting it on my level.
Harness is just like is like monstrous. Monstrous didn't have any
Gotcha.
meaning or anything. It was just monstrous, and then if it died and came back, it had no memory.
Okay. I wasn't sure if this was like being the what is it when you get the crown and you're the king, you're
Oh,
becoming
like
the
the
monarch.
monarch.
I wasn't sure if it
The-
was a property of you, like to say that you have now thrown Gamora into the pit and you have, done it, or if okay, well I get it now.
I feel like that should be
So
that way though. That sounds
yeah.
more
it
awesome
it,
and
it
more
did I guess
flavorful,
that's
but
kind of I think my knowledge of Marvel was confusing me on this one. It's basically just a way to turn on and off an ability.
So
I get it.
so so monarch is a designation, just like harness is a designation that cards can have. Monarch is a designation that a player can have. Just monarch has more rules associated with it, other than just a marker that other things can reference.
It's good to know.
Okay. Now, one thing. Now, since we wrote these notes up, they've gone ahead and spoiled all the universes within cards. But there's a version of this card on Magic Online on Arena called the Terminus of Return. Okay, instead of legendary artifact Infinity Stone, it is a legendary artifact Terminus Stone. It has the same abilities, only instead of the affinity symbol having the affinity ability, it has the origin ability. Same thing. Card works the same way. Um,
Yeah. It's a different type. It's a different card type as well. That was interesting to me. But it's
right.
just a quirk of this weird thing they have to do for Arena.
yeah.
Yeah.
Licensing, man.
Yeah.
So here's another thing that's not called out in the release notes. If you look, the legendary artifact, it says Infinity Stone. Now normally the way types work is if there are two words, that is two subtypes. So this would normally be in a type Infinity and a type Stone. However, and this is, we haven't seen the final rules for this, but um, if you remember with the Doctor Who sets, they had creature types of time, space, lord. Okay, and this is probably going to be a two-word subtype.
Probably.
Interesting.
Okay, yeah. Also, with the terminus of return, something that hasn't been specified in policy because we haven't had to deal with a universes within version or through the Omen Paths version of things. It is possible and conceivable for judges that when you are collecting deck lists, that a player who has predominantly played online to use the universes within card names. Like maybe they've been playing online and they just copy their deck list off of Arena and that's what they submit. We do not have any policy guidance, explicit policy guidance to say how to handle if they use the wrong card names. However, given that we have, policy that says like, hey, if it's a clerical error, if the card's clear and unambiguous, I think if you're using the universes within name for a universes beyond card, that is fairly unambiguous.
Yeah.
So we might not have a policy guidance on that, but please please, just look at the philosophy of policy and see that, yeah, it's the same card.
We have a common sense philosophy here, which is just, you know what you meant, and it's pretty clear to anybody who looks at this, you know what you meant. Even if you didn't know that was the name of it, that it makes sense. Let's not punish our new to paper arena players because we're trying to get them into stores. So,
Yep.
I assume this policy is the same. Like I saw those Godzilla cards that came out, and they're just another card. I assume the policy was the same, where you could write Mothra or whatever, even though it represents just a different card. Or
So
is there policy for that?
So here's the difference. The CR actually specifies that that there are some cards that have a second type, a second name line, and in those particular cases, we actually use the second name line to determine uniqueness. In this particular case,
Okay.
none of the cards actually have a second name line, but philosophically, we should treat them the exact same.
Okay. That's interesting. I hope, I'm going to have questions like that, and I hope they're useful to the listeners and not just me. But yeah, I'm curious.
I'm sure
it's all good.
Because, like, for example, I think the first time that came around was in the Ikoria set when they were doing the Godzilla treatments, where they had, like, the Ikoria creature, but they just slapped a Godzilla creature on top of it, and now that's a Mothra. But underneath that name was, like, the actual card name. But then when they started doing unique secret layers, like I think this came out with Stranger Things Secret Lair, they printed in-universe versions of those. And they just said that, like, this is equal to, I think it's in the set code, actually. This is equal to set code, secret lair drop number, whatever it is that is 11, for example. So a lot of weird things of how you reference cards to be, but there's plenty of precedent that says this is that card. Yeah, I know it's weird, but this is that card.
Well, that's interesting, and I didn't think about like arena players coming to paper for the first time. I thought, in my head, I was like, well, someone's doing this. They're just being like conniving, they're just being annoying. Um, and oh, hey, the next mechanic is connive. Is that pretty good? Nah, I'll get better by the end. Connive. Returning mechanic, allegedly. So an example card here is Mob Lookout for one blue or black. It's a creature, and it says when this creature enters, target creature you control connives. And the reminder text is draw a card, then discard a card. If you discard a non-land card, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. What's interesting here to me is that it's the target creature that connives, not the one that, in this case, generated the trigger. It's the creature that is doing it is conniving. I assume there are things that trigger when somebody connives.
Mm-hmm.
Connive it's a weird word the more you say it. Now, I didn't understand this next part, and so I'm going to need someone to explain it to me because it's about last known information. And I tried to ask Bryan earlier, and he ignored me.
So this point is a little subtle. So with Mob Lookout, it says when this creature enters, target creature you control connives. So if I were to remove the creature before that Mob Lookout's triggered ability resolves, then the whole ability gets countered because I have it's got one target and that target is removed. Now, if this said something like when Mob Lookout enters, it connives, okay, and then we were to remove Mob Lookout in response to its trigger there, then in that particular case, we would use last known information to connive, which is a little bit of just like a fiddly bit of the rules, but we use last known information to determine which object connived and who controlled it when it did connive, if that becomes relevant.
So you'll still have an opportunity then in that second situation to draw a card, then discard a card. And you have to. It's not an option, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So you'll have to draw a card, then discard a card. And if you do happen to discard a non-land card, you just won't put a +1/+1 counter on anything because the creature is gone.
Right. Yeah. Now, also, if somehow you connive, but you start with an empty hand, and then you aren't able to draw cards for some reason because of some other replacement effect, so you can't discard, then even if you do still have the creature, you won't be able to put a counter on anything.
Makes sense. You have to actually discard a card. Well, I see a guy. Well, you have to. Yeah, you have to go through the action of discarding a card. Now, that may not mean a card actually ends up in the graveyard, but you have to go through the action of having a card in hand and discarding it. Sometimes there could be a replacement effect or something that
Yes.
prevents the card from actually ending up in the graveyard, but you did discard.
Yes.
Makes sense?
Okay, next up, another returning mechanic is called modified. Modified is just a kind of like a container game term. It just means if the creature is equipped, has a counter on it, or is has an aura you control attached to it. For the you control bit, we only look at the auras to determine the controller. We don't look at if the equipment attached to the creature is something that you control, or you put the counters on your creature. We just, for the controller, we just care about auras you control enchanting a creature to determine whether or not it's modified.
Yep.
That's weird flavor-wise. Like, if I put an aura on your creature that gives it -1/-1, I would still say it's modified. The term isn't enhanced, but I'm
Yeah.
just confusing people at this point. The you control is just a little thing you have to remember, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, the U control is only for the auras. So the counters
Only for
are
ours,
just
yes.
counters on it. It is a modified creature if it has counters
Yeah.
on it. Doesn't matter who put it there.
Yeah.
It's just the it's not modified in the way you'd hope if it's pacifismed, for example.
Sure. Yep.
All right, so let's talk about another returning mechanic that actually has a twist. So we have some double-faced cards in this set, and they're actually pretty awesome double-faced cards. So for example, we have Peter Parker, 1 and a white. It is a legendary creature, human scientist hero. He's an 0/1, and when he enters, you create a 2/1 green spider creature token with reach, and it has the rules text, pay 1 green, white, blue, transform Peter Parker, activate only as a sorcery. And on the back of Peter Parker, we have Amazing Spider-Man. Legendary creature, spider human hero. He's a 4/4, and he has a mana cost on its back face that is 1 blue, white, and green, which is different from what you might expect from a transforming double-face card. We'll get there. Then it also has the rules text, Vigilance, Reach. Each legendary spell you cast that's 1 or more colors has web-slinging for green, a white, and a blue. So now, or in the past, we have had, since the beginning of double-face cards, we started off with transforming double-face cards back in Innistrad. Then they introduced, around Zendikar Rising, modal double-face cards, where you can play either side. You can choose to play the front side, or you could choose to play the back side, but the two sides never really interacted. It was either one or the other. They were totally separate, and importantly, modal double-face cards could not transform. Only transforming double-face cards could. Kind of makes sense. It's in the name. Until now, because now modal double-face cards can transform. So this Spider-Man card is a modal double-face card. You can cast Peter Parker for 1 and a white, or you can cast Amazing Spider-Man for 1 green, white, blue, or you can cast Peter Parker and then transform it using its activated ability into Amazing Spider-Man just fine. Now, as you can imagine, there's a lot of rules that are going to change because of this. We're not going to dive into the details of every little thing, but we are going to cover a lot of the important, relevant things. First of all, to determine if it's legal for you to play a modal double-face card, you're only going to consider the face that you are actually playing, and you will continue to ignore the other face's characteristics. So if there's a spell that says you cannot play multicolored creatures, then you cannot cast Amazing Spider-Man, but you could still cast Peter Parker because on that side, he is a monocolored white creature. If an effect allows you to play a land or cast a spell from among a group of cards, you can play or cast the appropriate face. So if this says you can cast a creature card from, let's say, the top 5 of your library, you can choose either Peter Parker or Amazing Spider-Man. If an effect allows you to put a card with particular characteristics on the battlefield without telling you to play or cast it, though, then you only are going to consider the front side of that card. So the rules around double-faced cards are still the same. Anywhere that is not the battlefield or the stack, the front face of the card is the only one that defines its characteristics. For effects that say, search up a 2 mana value creature, you can search up Peter Parker, but if it said 4 mana value creature, you cannot pull up this card. Another example, if an effect says that you can cast a spider creature card from your graveyard, you can cast the Amazing Spider-Man, the back face of Peter Parker, because he is a spider creature. But if an effect says to put all spider creature cards onto the battlefield from your graveyard, then you can't because Peter Parker is not a spider. He's just a human scientist and a hero.
Hero, yes, thank you. He didn't spend 3 years going to Hero Academy to be called scientist.
We can't reference other movies. Spider-Man only.
Oh, okay, sorry. You're going to keep the Spider-Man references only?
Everything's getting all wibbly-wobbly here. Anyways, so from there, now in everybody's favorite format here, Commander, we are going to consider both sides of any double-face card, transforming or modal, for its color identity. Now, the new big thing, modal double-face cards can be transformed or put on the battlefield transformed. This is the big change from the previous rules. So if you are told to transform a modal double-face card, it can transform only if the other face has a permanent type. You can't transform into a sorcery or instant because that goes against one of the big rules in Magic. You cannot have an instant or sorcery on the battlefield. So it has to be a permanent type in order for it to actually transform. Also, if you're told to put an MDFC onto the battlefield transformed, and it's an instant or sorcery on the front face, it will just stay
on the face that's being transformed into.
Oh, yes, on the front face, or just wherever it tells you to transform it to, then yes, it will just stay in whatever zone it's in. So exile and transform it, nope, can't do it if it's an instant or sorcery on the back.
So if something says, if we have like a creature on the front face and an instant or sorcery on the back, modal double face card, and we play something that allows us to exile and then transform, keep in mind that it's going to exile, and then when it tries to enter transformed, it would enter as an instant or sorcery, and the rules are going to leave it in its current zone, and its current zone is exile.
Yep, and then you turn into a sad panda.
Yes.
And to that point, actually, some people confuse this because of the way certain cards that have transformed in the past work. The act of transforming does not by itself inherently exile the card. So, for example, Peter Parker doesn't leave the battlefield to transform into the Amazing Spider-Man. He just turns over into its back face, and it is now Amazing Spider-Man. Doesn't change zones unless the effect says it does. A lot of people confuse that with some of the transforming Planeswalker cards that switch from legendary creatures into Planeswalkers on their back face. Some other effects do that, but that's not a default for this. And importantly, it is still the same object, so it hasn't changed. It'll still keep all the counters on it. It will still remember everything about its past. It has not gained amnesia. It is not that Spider-Man story. It's chill. And finally, modal double-face cards are allowed to transform in either direction. So it can go from front face to back face or back face to the front face. But for the cards that are in this set, they only go from the front face to the back face.
All right, then let's talk about individual cards now.
Yeah, this is first one we got here is Arachne Psionic Weaver, and this is one that I do not know. I'm going to be on Wikipedia a lot after this. All right, Arachne has web-slinging for a white, and she has, as Arachne enters, look at an opponent's hand, then choose a card type other than creature. Spells of the chosen type cost 1 more to cast. The only thing relevant here is to mention that the card types are creature, artifact, battle, enchantment, instant, kindred, which I was like, what is kindred? Oh, and then I remembered they changed that a long time ago. Planeswalker and sorcery. And battle's new to me too.
Yeah.
You can choose land, but lands are not cast. So it says here, spells of the chosen type cost 1 more to cast. You can't cast a land. So you can choose it, but it would be a bad choice because it's not going to affect the land at all because lands are not cast, they are played. The important thing is you also can't choose subtypes like food, spider, anything like that. Legendary is a super type. Snow is a super type. These are just the types. So I won't go through the list again.
All right.
Oh, here we go, Brian. Go ahead.
Yep. The notes for this card just says Brian rant. So
Get
this
it out of the way
card,
early.
yep, is 1 mana for a card called Bagel and Schmear. It is an artifact food for white and tap. Sacrifice this artifact. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. Draw a card. Activate only as a sorcery. And then 2 and tap. Sacrifice this artifact. You gain 3 life and draw a card. Here's my little mini rant, and this is a thing that I, looking at like Gwenum and Agent Venom and the Green Goblin, okay, I can kind of get behind that to a degree, or I accept the fact that those are fictional characters, but cards like Bagel and Schmear or some of the other, hot dog cart, I don't like, I'll call it like common modernity in my Magic sets. Like when you had like the television in
Duskmorn.
Duskmorn, didn't like that.
Brian, this is uncommon. This isn't uncommon.
It's a common.
Do I not know the symbols? That's an uncommon.
It's got a little
I was
C
just
down
making
at
a
the
joke.
bottom.
What is that
Yeah.
symbol then?
So
The
I
symbol
think
that's
in
a Spider-Man.
in Dominaria,
what is
they
going
started introducing a white symbol as the common symbol instead of just a black symbol.
You're
so that
right.
it was more easy for them to do different logos and stuff.
Wow, Swarm is a common. What a downgrade for that guy. You made a
Yeah.
bees and you're just a common.
So
I guess bees are
bees
common.
everywhere,
Okay.
hopefully.
Well,
Right.
my stupid joke failed, so please continue.
okay. and this is just kind of one of the things. Like I can look at our next card, Carnage Crimson Chaos, and go like, all right, that's a creature, it's a symbiote, that's a pretty fantastical thing. And even like a little magic bird or a little animated origami crane or something like that. Okay, cool. But just like a cup of coffee and a bagel and cream cheese, like, really? Come on, guy. I just don't. And this is one of the turnoffs of the set for me, is just there's no rules. There's just rant. It's just the
okay,
common
you know what?
everyday items.
Yeah. I was going to
modern
argue with you
items
because
in
that's
this
like my
don't like.
instinct is to just disagree with you. But
Okay.
in fairness, this is a Spider-Man set, not a New York set. You know what I mean? So, and Bagel and Schmear, I mean, I don't see a Bagel and Schmear and I think, oh, Spider-Man. You know what I mean? So you know what? I'm with you. You can have this
Yeah.
one.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I did.
All right.
So this set went through some developmental problems. Like people have been able to like piece together stuff, and one of the articles that Wizards released actually said at one point this set didn't have any commons. So it's kind of clear that like a lot of the common cards are, we'll say, street level mundane type stuff. I think one card that was mentioned was like Happy Parents. It's just like,
Yeah. Supportive parents.
I mean,
Okay, so Swarm wasn't even in it. Wow. My boy.
Or it might have been
Done dirty.
downshifted.
all right, that's
Okay, it's possible. Yeah.
that's my rant.
So I will point out one other thing.
Okay,
Coming
go for
from the unique perspective of being both a major Spider-Man fan from when I was growing up and being a native New Yorker, there is something about Spider-Man that always connected to me because he was a New Yorker. That was just a big part of his identity, and he was just like a guy in my hood kind of thing. So I get a little bit of why the New York flavor needs to come into this, especially if they're like grasping at straws to fill out a card file. But I agree to an extent. Like some of those things, the modernities of like, I agree with you wholeheartedly on like the TVs and the 80s vibe of Duskmorn.
Yeah.
Definitely stood out like a sore thumb to me. For some reason, Bagel and Schmear doesn't, but it's also because I just like the environment of New York City is such an important aspect to the Spider-Man character, I think, that it kind of fits.
Sure. But
What's
what
funny
if they
is
made a card and it was just it was an equipment and it was Crocs. Like that's what the card was, just a pair of
Yeah, I mean, they
Crocs.
could have just made this like the same card, but just make it Spider-Man gets a bagel and it's just him in a bodega, and that would have been fine.
It's kind of hard to make an artifact food. Like,
yeah of someone
Spider-Man
doing
gets
something.
a bagel. What?
Yeah, sure.
But I can't believe how much time. Luckily, this isn't my show, so I don't care. But how much time we spent on this. But what's funny is the TV and stuff. Because I'm a big fan of '80s horror, it didn't bug me because I think Dustmorn was capturing that vibe. So it's kind of what you were saying about the bagel and schmear. Yeah, that stuff didn't bother me that much. I thought it would when I first saw it, and I was like, no. Especially their little black and white joke in the TV specifically.
Oh yeah, and how it
Uh,
tapped for teamwork colors.
yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. I think that's part of the universe beyond that. It's just kind of like it gets that whole vibe overall. I don't know.
Well, the reason
Yeah.
why we're spending so much time talking about this card is because I'm letting you guys just tell me how much I am right, and so I'm allowing it. But we should probably cut that off and go on. I mean, I could listen to it all night, but we do need to continue
All
on.
right. Well, that's enough carnage.
So let's talk about Carnage, Crimson Chaos. Actually, one of my favorite Spider-Man characters of all time. I loved the Maximum Carnage video game and comic series when I was earlier. So let's see how awesome Carnage is. Carnage, for 2, a black and a red, is a 4/3 legendary creature symbiote villain. Sounds about right. He has Trample. When Carnage enters, return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains this creature attacks each combat if able, and when this creature deals combat damage to a player, sacrifice it. And it has Mayhem for a black and a red. Yeah, that's a sweet card. For rules stuff, yes, that's why we're here. We're here to talk about rules. So in this regard, when you are trying to evaluate the mana value of a card in your graveyard, a card with X in its value, X equals 0. For MDFCs, just like we mentioned beforehand, we're only going to look at the front face of the MDFC to determine whether its mana value qualifies for this. And if for some reason the creature can't attack, because let's say it enters the battlefield tapped, or it doesn't have haste, oh well, too bad, I guess it can't attack. Not quite the maximum carnage that we're going for, but close enough.
He's just carnage.
He's just carnage, yeah.
I guess that was it for that one. Sorry, I was sitting here thinking, I guess I'll ask. I don't know. I feel like I'm delaying too much, but I'm curious with these double face cards. Say you're in a tournament setting, you have Peter Parker. We can say flipped now, right? We don't have to be careful about that anymore. Like everybody has forgotten flip cards at this point. Is that right? Or do we still have to be careful?
What do you mean by be careful?
Well,
With sleeves?
when double face cards were new, yeah. So y'all aren't even flip cards weren't that old. So we tried not to say flip instead of transform. But we can
Oh,
just say flip now, right?
yeah. I mean, it's
Anyway,
not precise, but it's
yeah.
It's
Well,
technically
it's neither
correct. It's you get it.
it's technically
um,
correct.
okay. So you're in a tournament setting. You have Peter Parker. You've transformed him to Amazing Spider-Man. You took him out of the sleeve. You put him back in the sleeve. He died. You put him in the graveyard as Amazing Spider-Man. Is that
Mhm.
in itself an infraction? Or does it only become an infraction when you try to grab him with Carnage, for example? Because in your
Correct.
graveyard, he is Peter Parker.
Correct. Like basically, what happens is if it's just sitting in your graveyard with the Amazing Spider-Man side face up, it's really not a problem until we try
until
and
it becomes
treat it
one.
like Amazing Spider-Man instead of Peter Parker.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Like if you grab that Amazing Spider-Man out of your graveyard with Carnage's ability and go, oh yeah, and Peter Parker comes in and drop it on the battlefield, finish doing what you were doing, and then take it out of the
hmm
sleeve and flip it over, MBD.
hmm All right. Okay, the next card, and I promise this is the only other non-rules card on here, so don't, turn off the podcast because we're just in the seas, is City Pigeon, which is white, it's flying, and it says when this creature leaves the battlefield, create a food token. the important thing is the picture here shows a pigeon landing next to a hot dog. Apparently, there's been some confusion about when this creature dies. Are you eating the pigeon or are you getting the hot dog back? What is the food token? Is it the pigeon? Is it the hot dog? And Matt Tabak, a former rules manager, made an official ruling on BlueSky. I assume he's still allowed to do that. I don't think anyone could stop him. That the food token dropped is indeed a hot dog. It is not the pigeon itself. It is still gross to eat that, but it is the hot dog, not the pigeon.
Yeah, especially off of New York City Street. Ooh, no.
Even if you caught it, even if you Spider-Maned it, like if that pigeon takes it in its little claws, yeah, I don't care. I don't care if you caught it immediately. It's too late.
There's no 5-second rule for pigeon hot dogs?
No, not for me.
In New York.
Not New York?
Nope.
All right.
All right.
Now that
Rules
donut
only
around
from
that
now
other
on.
pigeon's head, maybe.
That's a bagel.
Is that a bagel?
I would say so. All right. All
It
right.
looks like
all
an
right.
old-fashioned donut.
It is a bagel with schmear. All right. Next up is the costume closet. It is 1 and a white for an artifact that says this artifact enters with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. You may tap it, move a +1/+1 counter from this artifact onto target creature you control, activate only as a sorcery. And then whenever a modified creature you control leaves the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on this artifact. Okay. And then with the reminder of equipment, or as you control, and counters on the creature are all modifications. So the +1/+1 counters don't do anything on Costume Closet itself. It doesn't make it a creature. However, if it somehow becomes a creature, those +1/+1 counters are going to start being relevant. The next up is if you run out of counters on your closet. Activating the ability won't do anything except for targeting something. So if you run out of counters on your closet, activating the ability won't do anything except target something. Now, this is slightly different than some other cards that we've talked about in previous sets. This is tap, move a +1/+1 counter from this artifact onto target creature you control, activated only as a sorcery. In this particular case, it is being very, very specific as to what counter you are doing, and you are moving it from location A to location B, which is different. Remember when we've said, like, with a creature with +1/+1 counters, when it dies, we say put its counters on another creature. Okay, that's using different terminology, and the rules are explicit as to what it means to put a creature's counters on something else. That is not what we're doing here. It's a different phrasing of the wording. Here we are being told very, very explicitly to move a counter from a thing onto another thing. Which is why, if there's no counters on it, there's nothing to do. Okay. That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Makes sense. So speaking of things that like counters, this next card looks like it would be great for your Hydra deck, but I promise you it's not. This is Doc Ock's Tentacles. It is a 1-drop artifact equipment for 1 generic mana. Whenever a creature you control with mana value 5 or greater enters, you may attach this equipment to it. Equipped creature gets +4/+4, and it has equip 5. So you really want a creature with mana value 5 or greater entering the battlefield, because 5 is a lot to pay for an equipment. And this is where we remind you that a creature entering with X in its mana cost, X equals 0 when you're determining what its mana value is. So it's different from, for example, you cast a Hydra that has, let's say green and X. Let's say you cast that for green and 5 generic mana. On the stack, that would be a 6 mana value creature. But when it enters, when this triggers, when it looks at it, it is looking at the mana cost on the printed card. That card will have X in its mana value, or in its mana cost, saying that it is a 0 for that X. So that creature really is only a 1 mana value creature, and you get very sad.
All right. Well, speaking of Dr. Octopus, the next card is Dr. Octopus Master Planner. 5 blue-black. Other villains you control get +2/+2. Your maximum hand size is 8. And at the beginning of your end step, if you have fewer than 8 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference. The first thing is, and I'm glad to see we still have the tradition of having to talk about intervening ifs every single release notes episode, is that trigger has an intervening if clause. Let's see if I can dig deep and remember what that means. I believe it means that if the if isn't satisfied when the trigger happens, so in this case, if you have fewer than 8 cards in hand, then the effect doesn't trigger at all.
Yeah,
Does that sound right?
that's exactly right.
Yep.
It is just like
It's
riding
been
a
a long
bicycle.
time, guys. It's been a long time. Um, yeah. Now the other thing, and this was my very first thought when I read this card was, okay, well, what if this is saying your maximum hand size is 8, and something else is saying your maximum hand size is uh, 5? Now, how do those two interact? Now, that one, I'm guessing. That one, I've never had to deal with. I believe um, it's not technically layers, but we would deal with timestamps there. I think the latest effect would be the one that applies. Is that right?
Yes, there is a we'll say like a shadow layer 8, which is the
Yeah.
everything else bucket of which hand size is a continuous effect. Yes, so
Yes.
we would use timestamps.
Timestamps. Yes. All right. All right. 2 for 2. All right.
Yeah.
Now, I'll be honest. This next bit I did not follow. So I'm gonna have questions if someone else could explain that.
Okay. So right here, the effect says at the beginning of your end step, if you have fewer than 8 cards, draw cards equal to the difference. Okay. So the cards that you draw might actually be altered by replacement effects. So we're going to look at the math and say at the very beginning, if I have 4 cards in my hand, then the
Oh,
difference is 4 cards. So I'm going to draw 4 cards. Now those cards that I'm drawing might be replaced. So if I have something that says if I would draw a card, draw 2 cards instead, then I am going to draw 8 cards because I'm supposed to draw 4, and instead I draw, each one of those draws gets replaced with 2 draws, so I'm drawing a total of 4. If I
starting
have
point there was
some
you had 4 cards in hand, right?
Yeah.
And some, and so now we're at the beginning of your end step. I see now. I actually just misread what this said. I totally get it.
Oh, okay.
And now we're at your end step. The ability triggers. It says if you have fewer than 8 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference. The difference between 8 minus 4 is 4. And then in your example, you would have the replacement effect that said if you would draw a card, draw 2 cards instead. So, like you said, it would be 8 total cards drawn, which is very octopus. And that's because each individual draw is replaced by that replacement effect.
Yep. Uh,
Yep.
Also, if you had an effect that said the next time you would draw a card this turn, each player returns a permanent they control to their owner's hand instead, and you were going to draw 4 cards, so instead you would bounce everything, or not bounce everything, but each player would return a permanent they control to their own hand, and you would draw 3 cards. Or we could
Yep.
use the dredge mechanic instead of picking a card that no one knows about. Uh,
You
words
know
of
what?
wind.
I don't know the dredge mechanics, so um, yeah. The important thing there was in your example effect that might be a real card. It says
Hmm.
the next time you would draw, so it's only going to apply to the first draw.
Yep.
And somehow this didn't apply to your very first draw of the turn. So yeah, the important part here is you're not drawing until you hit a total of 8 cards. The game basically does the math. How many cards are you going to draw? And then you draw them, and then we apply um, any replacement effects that might apply to that. So,
Yep.
and of course, I guess just to put a little bow on it, if we were in that earlier situation where, let's say, this says your maximum hand size is 8, another card comes out and says your maximum hand size is 5, the trigger doesn't actually reference your maximum hand size, it just references the number 8. So you would still draw up to 8, and then, of course, at the end of your turn, you would have to discard down to 5, which you're already at the end of your turn. So you'd have to cast these cards in your end step and then discard.
All right. Next up is my favorite card in the set, by a
Cool.
country mile. It is
I like it a lot.
Electro. What's that?
I like it a lot.
Yeah. Electro Assaulting Battery. An assaulting battery. That's a different card, but assaulting battery. 1 red for a 2/3 legendary creature human villain with flying. You don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, add red. And when Electro leaves the battlefield, you may pay X. When you do, he deals X damage to target player. All right. So first here is red mana. You keep what you keep. It spans turns. This effect doesn't apply only to your current turn. All right. Next up is if Electro goes away somehow, exiles, dies, goes to the command zone, whatever, and you have mana remaining in your mana pool, it doesn't immediately disappear. You have until the end of your next step or phase to use it as normal. If some of that red mana has restrictions tied to it, let's say you exerted an arena of glory, or actually that's not a restriction. It's got a rider associated with it, but the same thing applies. Like if you have like red mana that can only be spent on creatures somehow, that is still going to apply when you eventually use it. Or if it is mana from Arena of Glory, if you use it to cast a creature spell 3 turns later, that creature's going to have haste. Okay,
That's awesome.
yeah, it's gonna be a little bit of a memory problem, but some people in Commander are gonna get you with it. Now, the last ability, much like we have continued the time-honored tradition of intervening if clauses in triggers, our relatively new tradition is the one card with the reflexive trigger in each set. So, Electro's last ability, when Electro leaves the battlefield, you may pay X. When you do, he deals X damage to target player. That is a reflexive trigger. The first part just happens. Okay? The second part is the reflexive trigger that goes on the stack like any other trigger if you pay or when you pay X. If you don't pay anything, that second part of the trigger doesn't happen.
Love that card.
Yeah, it's
so good.
Interestingly, if you pay 0, the second half does happen.
If you pay 0, yeah, which is kind of weird because we have that tournament shortcut that says if you can pay 0, you're assumed to pay 0.
Yeah.
But so the whole reason that they've started doing like reflexive triggers and stuff like that, CJ, is like the old
Arena.
templating.
I assume every single change is for Arena.
Yeah,
That's
I
not a
saw.
bad
Actually, I
assumption,
just learned about these. Yeah, I just learned about these a few days ago, and it was something that triggers every turn. So I realized if that was triggering every single time, it would be something you would have to deal with every single time. But when they make it like this, then I don't know. It made sense for Arena. This one doesn't make as much sense to me, to be reflexive, honestly. But
it does, because
it prevents a target.
You'd have to choose a target.
Yeah.
And
but it only triggers one time.
Like, well, I'm
it's
not
not
paying
like
the
the end of
target.
the
I'm not
world.
paying any mana. Why are you making me choose a target?
Yeah, I get it.
All right.
Yeah, these are new to me. I have a few comments on this card, if I may.
Yeah, please.
First off, you liked Assaulting Battery. Did you see Shriek Troublemaker?
No.
Oh.
Treble?
No, hold on.
That's
Let me
good.
look this up.
I don't even know what she does. It's just the name. She's not one of the cards we're covering.
Oh, yeah. Some of the names in here are really good, and literally I did not hear the Assaulting Battery pun until Brian literally just said it out loud, and I went,
Brian said it. Yeah. I also just want to comment on Spider-Man having 2 electricity villains, because he also has Shocker. Like, how did that happen?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Spiders aren't immune to bug zappers.
I guess not.
This next card is super flavor and super powerful. This is the card that represents Spider-Man hiding on the ceiling. It's called Hide on the Ceiling. For X and a blue, it's an instant that says exile X target artifacts and or creatures. Return the exiled cards to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So before we even talk rules, flavor-wise, I love everything about this card. The flavor text of Aunt May going like, oh, I could have swore I heard him around in here somewhere, and like
Mhm.
just stuck to his bedroom ceiling, hiding from Aunt May while he's in his Spider-Man costume. Like, A+ for flavor on this one. Absolutely love it. Rules wise, if you exile a double-faced card this way, so whether it's a transformed hero or one of those saga creatures from Final Fantasy, it will return to the battlefield with its front face up as its default. Just something to remember because there's so many of them out there.
I like that it's artifacts too, because it could be like his web shooters or something like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that he would also want to hide on the ceiling.
Oh yeah.
All right. The next one, I actually mentioned this guy earlier, is a Hydro-Man Fluid Felon. Blue. When you cast a blue spell, if Hydro-Man is a creature, he gets +1/+1 until end of turn. At the beginning of your end step, untap Hydro-Man. Until your next turn, he becomes a land and gains tap add blue. He's not a creature during that time. That's reminder text. I'll tell you, when I first read this card, I thought it was like a weird kind of pseudo phasing. But I realized afterwards, like basically he is an island on your opponent's turn. I mean, starting at the end of your turn, and then on your turn, he's Hydro Man. That's basically what it is. Let's
Yeah,
see.
he
So
turns into water. Like that's his big thing where he just can
yeah,
disappear into any body of water, disappears, and it's like, oh yeah, he's in there. Like he's effectively masquerading as an island because he's just in that water. You can't see him until he shows up and punches you in the face.
um, yeah, okay. So his second ability that turns him into the land, it ends when your turn begins. So you're not going to have any opportunity at all to get mana from him when your turn starts. However, that ability resolves in your end step. It's triggered at the beginning of your end step. Um, it becomes a land, so he's no longer a creature. So the turn you play him, even though he'll be summoning sick, at the end of your turn, he's going to get untapped. Well, he probably won't be tapped, and he's going to turn into a land. Lands are not affected by summoning sickness, so you actually could use his mana and your end step if you had some reason to need to do that, or of course, use his mana on your opponent's turn as well, because he'll be a land throughout that entire time. So I think it's a cool card. Like I said, I didn't know him, but that's a cool card.
Very cool. Next up is J. Jonah Jameson. For 2 and a red is a legendary creature, human citizen. When J. Jonah Jameson enters, suspect up to 1 target creature. Reminder, suspected creature has menace and can't block. Suspected is a designation. So a suspected creature... Oh, sorry, the last ability is whenever a creature you control with menace attacks, create a treasure token. So a few reminders. The first reminder is slander is spoken. In print, it's liable. All right. The next reminder is a suspected creature gains menace and this creature can't block. These effects stick around on until the card changes zones or it somehow loses the suspected designation. There are some cards from Murders at Karlov Manor that cause creatures to lose their suspected designation. If the card somehow loses all abilities, okay, because we don't have those cards in standard, it can now block, and it doesn't have menace, but it's still suspected because being suspected is just a designation. All right. There's a note here that says CJ has a question and a parlor trick. What is that? What's your parlor trick?
I do. You actually answered the question just then, so thanks. My parlor trick is to list the layers, which is copy, control, text, type, color, abilities, power, and toughness, which I can still somehow do this long after. I
That's
assume I
great.
didn't add any others.
Yeah. Now you said power and toughness.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to do the power and toughness layers?
Oh no, I don't do that. Come on, nobody needs to know that. That all works how you want it to work. You don't have to have them memorized. Okay. So yeah, my question was, I guess now that you've answered it, I just wanted to explain that a little bit more. Like being suspected, it's not the suspected part isn't interacting with the layers at all, because that's not one of those things I just listed.
Correct.
It's a designation? Is that what the rules call it?
It's a designation. Remember how we said earlier, like designations can have rules meaning or don't have to have rules meaning? Like, okay, this is a designation that has rules meaning.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
So,
yeah.
um, yeah, so it's going to keep the designation even though it loses all abilities, but it will lose the abilities that were granted to it because of that designation. It'll lose menace and can't block because
Yes.
that's in the abilities part of the layers, of course.
Mm-hmm. All right. A few other notes. Being suspected is not copyable. As we've said, it's just a designation that that cards can have. And J. Jonah, this is very flavorful. J. Jonah Jameson can suspect multiple creatures. Okay. Um, if you have something that like copies triggers, suspecting a new creature does not unsuspect the old one. All right.
Can we
There
just
you go.
appreciate the flavor on this card, by the way? I mean, they got the word menace onto a J. Jonah Jameson card multiple times. This is
And
just
suspect.
perfection. And it's so good. And he gains treasure when a creature with menace does something. I mean, come on. This is incredible. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Enough fangirling. Now on to, oh, well, somebody else I want to fangirl over. Fantastic. Anyways, Lady Octopus, Inspired Inventor. For a single blue mana, it's an O2 legendary creature human scientist villain. Whenever you draw your first or second card each turn, put an ingenuity counter on Lady Octopus. Tap, you may cast an artifact spell from your hand with mana value less than or equal to the number of ingenuity counters on Lady Octopus without paying its mana cost. So, one big thing about all these cards that care about when you draw your first or second card each turn, or when you cast a certain number of spells each turn, they can look back in time in the turn to see how many of those actions you've performed. So, for example, if you draw your first card for turn, being the card you draw for your draw step, and then cast Lady Octopus, then somehow draw a second card, this ability would trigger because you drew your second card for turn. But then let's say you were lucky enough to draw another card. It saw that you already drew your first and second one, so Lady Octopus would not trigger again, even though that's only the second one that she was around for. She cares more about what actually happened in the turn, whether she was there or not. And from the activated ability, the spell is cast as the ability resolves, so you can't save it for later. But also, you don't have to cast a spell, though. This
All
card is
right.
going to be very busted in some competitive commander circles, that's for sure.
I
Cool.
suspect so.
Yeah.
Commander, I've never heard about it. Tell me all about it.
Ooh, don't.
That's a joke.
We'll invite you back for a
That's a
CDH
joke.
episode. You can have fun with that.
Yeah. Uh, all right. The next one is Lizard Connor's Curse. I am going to struggle in the second half of this one. I'm going to need y'all's help, but let me explain the card first. So it has trample, and I guess you all have. What do they call it when they have the words in italics? It says lizard formula. What is that?
They're flavor words.
Flavor words. Yeah, we haven't mentioned those. I guess you don't need to. I guess everyone kind of gets it. Yeah, so it has an ability called Lizard Formula, but it's not really an ability. It's just flavor. When Lizard Connor's Curse enters, up to one target creature loses all abilities and becomes a green lizard creature with base power and toughness 4/4. One thing, big thing to note here is this ability is not until end of turn. You know, I think we intuitively expect these abilities to be until end of turn, but this is permanent. So whatever you target is permanently has no abilities and becomes a green lizard creature with base power toughness 4/4. I think I covered it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Next up is this card. I feel like it's named after what my mom used to call me when I was a teen, Mr. Negative. For 5 white and a black is a legendary creature human villain, 5/5 with vigilance and lifelink, with the ability that says when Mr. Negative enters, you may exchange life totals with target opponent. If you lost life this way, draw that many cards. Ho, 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 ho.
Jeez.
Yep. So, few things to know about this. We don't see exchange life totals super often on cards, but exchanging life totals is really just gaining or losing the life necessary to equal the other player's life total. So if CJ is at 10 and I'm at 20, CJ is going to gain 10 and I'm going to lose 10. Okay. Now, if for whatever reason one of us cannot gain or lose life, then the exchange won't happen. So the game kind of looks to see before it actually does the exchange, does the change. It goes, can I do it equitably? Can I do it on both sides? And then the answer is no. You can't do it on one of the sides. The exchange just doesn't happen.
And just to dive into that just slightly more is, as Brian said, players are gaining and losing life, right? So if things that trigger when someone gains life will still trigger, things that trigger when someone loses life will still trigger.
Yes.
The exchange is just shorthand for gain life to be equal to your opponent, and your opponent loses life or whatever direction it needs to go in.
There's a special rule that says if basically with an exchange, if you can't do both sides of it, then you don't do either.
That's a good point. Yes.
It's a concept that's tied to exchanging.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Whether it's life total or creatures or anything like that. You've got to what is that Full Metal Alchemist law of equitable exchange or something like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Not an anime guy.
No, when you all do the Full Metal episode, I'm sure it's coming.
Oh, okay.
You can cover it then.
Okay.
All right. Next up is Molten Man, Inferno Incarnate. For 2 and a red, legendary creature, elemental villain. It's a 0/0, but when Molten Man enters, search your library for a basic mounting card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Molten Man gets +1/+1 for each mountain you control. And when Molten Man leaves the battlefield, you sacrifice a land. So mechanically, this is one of Red's newer abilities where they can search out lands, but will force you to sacrifice them later on to still make them somewhat temporary. Interesting abilities. But one thing that's really important some people might not think about with this card, if you cast it for 2 and a red, but you don't control a mountain, that trigger will go on the stack, but space-based actions will have you move your Molten Man to the graveyard because it has no power and toughness. So you really got to control a mountain as this creature enters in order for it to actually stick around. The trigger will go on the stack and you can still do it. And in fact, it's kind of interesting because you can stack those triggers however you want on when it leaves the battlefield, sacrifice a land, and then bring out a land. But
wait,
yeah, it's just not going to go the way you want it to be.
No, you can't stack them any way you want.
Because it enters, trigger is waiting to go on the stack, state-based action sees, oh, dead creature. Molten Man goes to the graveyard, leaves the battlefield, trigger triggers, state-based actions. Yeah. Now you put your triggers on stack.
Yep. So our show notes for this is just simply hope you control a mountain as this creature enters the battlefield.
Yeah.
Which I guess if you want to just swap whatever random land for a basic mountain, yeah, sure, go for it.
I guess if you wanna.
2 and a red to do that. Sounds like a deal.
Sure. We don't tell you how to play well. We just tell you how to play by the rules.
All right.
All right.
CJ, do you want me to take this one?
No, I'll do it. That's the roll of the dice.
All right.
All right. I got the one that copies something. They should have put clone just straight up in this set. But anyway, all right. This Peter Parker's camera for
Actually,
1 mana.
Didn't they? They
put clones.
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
right?
like they should just put clone straight up. All right. Peter Parker's camera, 1 mana. This artifact enters with 3 counters on it. 2 and a tap. Remove a film counter from this artifact. Copy target activated or triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. All right, so the tough part here is copying abilities. And also, how do you know if something is activated or a triggered ability? Activated abilities always have they're always written like cost : effect. That's how I always remembered it. Is I would just look at the colon. If you see a colon, and sometimes it's hidden behind reminder text, so don't forget about that. But if you see a colon in there, it's a activated ability because you're always going to pay a cost to activate.
Or you're in the doctor's office.
What?
What? If you see a colon,
of course you would think about that.
yeah. Okay.
And then, I had a similar thought, but I was like, this is a family show. People will sit down together and listen to this as a family. Um, trigger, triggered abilities, they always use the words when, whenever, or at. So they're always written
Sir, this
as
is a Wendy's.
they're always written as like a trigger condition and then effect. So at the beginning of your upkeep, when this creature dies. Um, and once again, this is something that can be hidden in reminder text. For example, prowess will hide it. Um, okay, so that's how you know what a legal target for this is. That's an activated or triggered ability. Um, the good news is, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. That's basically every ability except for a mana ability, which you wouldn't be able to target anyway. So, all right, let's talk about copying this. What this does is that there's an ability on the stack, say it's a triggered ability at the beginning of your when Molten Man enters, search your library for a basic mountain card. And you're like, I want that too. You can pay 2 and a tap, target this, and you're just going to get a copy. So it's just going to put another copy of that same triggered ability on the stack, except for you're the owner of it now. The source of the copy is the same as the source of the original ability. So furthering this example, Molten Man would be the source of the trigger. Um, but you're now the owner. So it says you are the one that's going to actually search. If the ability that's copied has an X, whose value was determined as it was activated, the copy will still have the same value of X. This goes to what Marcos was saying earlier about spells on the stack and triggered abilities. The X value is maintained on the stack. It's only once they resolve, if it's a creature, that it gets lost. If the ability divides damage or distributes counters among a number of targets, the division and number of targets can't be changed. So what that means is, so this ability, the camera, says you may choose new targets for the copy, and that's true. You can change what the targets are for the copy. What you can't change is how many targets there are for the copy. And so that's what we're trying to say here.
If there was something like there was a target that said divide 3+1/+1 counters up amongst 1, 2, or 3 target creatures. Okay,
Mhm.
and you said I'm going to put 2 counters on a creature and 1 counter on another creature, and you made a copy. You'd be locked into copying 2 targets. One's getting 2+1/+1 counters, and one's getting 1 counter. You wouldn't be able to say, "Well, I'm going to change it up and make 3 targets, and they each get 1 counter."
Copy. So you can't choose to pay any activation cost for the copy. Of course, that's because the cost has already been paid. But
Mm-hmm.
anything on the copy that cares about whether or not those costs were paid from the original ability, that's copied. That knowledge is copied. So I guess it's kind of the same as the X, honestly. If something says X, deal X damage to target creature, um, it's the same kind of concept there. The actual cost paid for it is copied as part of the copy.
Mm-hmm.
Any choices when the ability resolves won't have been made yet when it's copied. So say it's a may, say the trigger has a may on it. You could choose to do the may, and the original owner of the trigger could choose not to do the may. That decision happens when it resolves. Similarly, if the triggered ability asks you to pay a cost, you pay for that cost separately. This is a copy of the original trigger. If the ability is linked to a second ability, copies of the ability are still linked to that second ability. If the second ability refers to an exiled card, it refers to all cards exiled by the ability in the copy. So we haven't gotten to them yet, but the spot Living Portal has an enter the battlefield ability, um, and it exiles cards. The when he dies, all those cards are returned. The
So let's just talk about Spot. Okay, so Spot right now is for 3 white and a black. It says when Spot enters, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent and up to 1 target non-land permanent card from a graveyard. And then says when Spot dies, put them on the bottom of the owner's library. If you do, return the exiled cards to their owner's hands. Now, with normal linked abilities, those exiled cards are referring to the cards that were exiled with that first triggered ability. If that first triggered ability gets copied, though, okay, we've now exiled potentially up to 4 target cards. So when Spot dies, because that triggered ability was copied, the linked ability that returns the cards is able to see all the cards exiled with both triggers. Okay. And we'll
That
talk
is,
a little bit more about Spot in just a moment.
yeah.
But yeah, that's what that's trying to say with copying triggers when you have linked abilities.
Mark Rosewater would call that a throw forward, talking about a card that hasn't been discussed yet. But hey, here we are.
Yes. Okay.
And that's it. That's it. That is the my best attempt to summarize all the rules for copying, which are a lot.
All right. Next up is Spider Punk for 1 and a red. This is a legendary creature, Spider Human Hero. It's a 2/1 critter with Riot. This creature enters with your choice of a +1/+1 counter or haste, is the reminder text. Other spiders you control have Riot. Spells and abilities can't be countered, and damage can't be prevented. With the flavor text, disrespect authority, smash the system. Okay, this card's a home run hit. Like J. Jonah Jameson was a pretty good hit. This one is a pretty good hit too. Like all spiders gain Riot is just great.
Excellent.
Okay, so Riot. Now I gave you the reminder text for it, but Riot actually says you may have this permanent enter with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. If you don't, it gains haste, which means haste is the default if you can't add counters for some reason. Okay. Also, Riot is a replacement effect. Okay. What that means is your opponent can't actually know if you're going to give the creature a +1/+1 counter or haste, or rather, they can't respond after they know. So Spider Punk is on the stack, okay, and then do you respond? No, and go, okay, well I'm gonna have it enter with haste. They go, oh, hold on, now that I know that it's got a haste, I want to counter it. Nope, can't do that. It's a replacement effect that changes how it enters the battlefield. Yeah, pretty boss.
All right, the next one I've pointed out to it like 8 times this whole episode, but the next card is called Spider-Verse for 3 red. It is an enchantment that says the quote legend rule unquote doesn't apply to spiders you control. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, you may copy it. If you do, you may choose new targets for the copy. If the copy is a permanent spell, it gains haste. Do this only once each turn. So, first of all, it's a little crunchy here, but it's important. The card doesn't say the legend rule doesn't apply to creatures you control. It specifically says the legend rule doesn't apply to spiders you control. And that can create some slightly complicated board states. But essentially, you get to ignore any of the spiders that you have for the purpose of figuring out what you have to sacrifice to the legend rule. This is normally pretty easy to figure out. However, if you get a mix of some legendary spiders and some legendary non-spiders, all with the same name, you're only going to consider the non-spiders for the purpose of applying the legend rule. So let's say I have 4 creatures on the battlefield. All of them are legendary permanents with the same name, but 2 of them are spiders, 2 of them are not. I only sort out between the 2 that are not, sacrifice 1 of them to the legend rule, and carry on with 3 remaining spiders, all of which are legendary, but 2 of them are spiders, 1 is not a spider. And now for that second ability, for whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, once you choose to actually perform that action of copying a spell with this ability, then for the remainder of the turn, it's not going to trigger again. So you can have like some crazy storm deck and a huge stack with 5 or 6 of these triggers going onto the stack because you're just slinging spells from exile all over the place. But as long as you haven't chosen to actually copy the spell, because remember it says you may copy it, as long as you're not choosing to copy it, it says, okay, you still haven't done the thing yet, so we're still going to give you the chance to do the thing, and it will still continue to trigger until you decide, let's say on the 3rd or 4th one down your stack, then you decide, yes, I would like to copy this spell. The rest will resolve and won't do anything, and then it will not trigger again because you've already done the thing. You can only do the thing once each turn. That's that.
Yep.
Clear as mud. Prosper's going to love this one. CDH builders, go out there and get it. Let's go.
Yep. Now with Prosper, just you don't actually create a treasure token for the copy because you are not playing the card from the copy from exile. You're just straight up copying it. But Prosper decks care about casting things from exile, so and
Seems good.
Spider-Verse does. Yeah. The obligatory works well in Prosper. All right, we're back to Spot Living Portal. So,
Hey, deja vu.
for 3 white and a black, Spot the Living Portal is a 4/4 legendary creature, human scientist villain. Just real quick, read those abilities again. When the spot, when the spot enters, yeah,
It is
when
very
the
much
spot
the
enters,
spot.
yep, the spot, capital T, capital S, enters, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent and up to 1 target non-land permanent from a graveyard. When Spot dies, put him on the bottom of his owner's library. If you do, return the exiled cards to their owner's hands. All right. If you somehow have a token of Spot, okay, and Spot dies, Spot is going to go to the graveyard. However, you can't move him from the graveyard to the library. Why? Because he ceases to exist when state-based actions are checked. Okay, the second trigger says when Spot dies, put him on the bottom of his owner's library. If you do, return the exiled cards. Well, you didn't, because Spot's gone. See Spot run away from the graveyard. There, you did not return Spot to the bottom of the owner's library, so you do not get to return those exiled cards. All right. So now I'm going to ask a question, since this is, a legendary creature, as is all cards in this set. What happens if Spot the Living Portal is your commander? Okay. Like, how does that work? Because we just said, Spot dies, and if it's a token, it dies, and it's not there to go onto the bottom of the library. So can Spot be a command? Can Spot work as a commander?
You want to take this one, CJ?
Or
Or have you
no,
not
I'm
kept
not a
up with the
commander.
commander rules?
I'm not a commander guy. Yeah, I
All
was
right.
asking people what like the starting life totals were in commander. Um,
Yeah.
I know it's a
Okay.
replacement effect for the commander when your commander dies that you can choose to put him in the command zone. So technically, to answer Brian's question, you could choose not to put him in the command zone and just put him on the bottom of your library. But I
Well,
don't think that's what he's trying to ask.
when the Spot dies, okay, put him on the bottom of the exile. So we have put him in the graveyard. Okay, we have let the trigger go on the stack. We have opted to leave Spot in the graveyard. Now the triggered ability goes to resolve, and it says put him on the bottom of the owner's library. Well, we don't want to put him on the bottom of the owner's library. We want to use the commander replacement effect to put him in the command zone. And then the rest of the effect says, if you do, return the exiled cards to their owner's hand. Do you get to return those exiled cards? Because you didn't actually put the living Spot on the bottom of the owner's library. And the answer is yes, you do actually get those cards. And the reason is Rule 118.12, okay, that basically says some spells, activated abilities, and triggered abilities read do something if a player, it's a lot of words, I'm just going to paraphrase, do something, period. If a player does, then effect. And that's what this is. Put this on the bottom of the library. If you do, effect, return the exiled cards to the owner's hand. Okay, if that player does the thing, the action do something is a cost paid when the spell or ability resolves. If the player does the thing, the if a player does, doesn't, or can't clause checks whether the player chose to pay the optional cost or started to pay the mandatory cost, regardless of what the events that actually occurred are. So this means that replacement effects can actually change that. It was the decision to pay the cost. Now, the fact that it got replaced with going to the command zone, you still paid the cost. So you will get to return the exiled cards to the owner's hand.
Oh,
Ta-da!
We're good.
Commander.
Oh,
That's pretty
Commander.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And then if you copied the first ability, as we already talked about, you could be returning 4 cards.
Yeah.
Got him.
Now
Full
we're
circle.
talking. Yeah. Full spot.
Yeah.
Love it. So what do we all think?
Cool set. About the set.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a cool set. Uh, honestly, we're under 2 hours here. That's wild. So maybe not that complex. Um, maybe not that many things actually.
I
I looked,
mean,
I looked through a bunch of the cards, but yeah.
yeah, I think this was also a generally smaller set. I think they said it was like 180 cards, and most cards are like 250,
Oh.
280, somewhere around there. So there's rumors, I believe, that this set started off as like a Assassin's Creed style set where it had a much smaller amount of cards. It was going to be smaller booster packs. It wasn't going to be standard legal. Then they wanted to make it standard legal and went, oh, we got to fluff this up a bit. So they added in a whole bunch of extra cards. I think you can
I
kind of tell that a little bit just
yeah.
by like the size of the set and like Brian kind of pointed out earlier, I'm going to call it the mundaneness of some of the cards in there, like hot dog cart and all that. Like
Hmm.
it's there, it's fine. As a huge Spider-Man fan, I love when they nailed the flavor on the Spider-Man stuff, and I just kind of meh at the other stuff personally, but there are definitely some home runs in here flavor wise for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Brian?
Um, I'm fine with it existing. I don't think it should have kept with standard. I realize that folks really didn't like the Assassin's Creed style set, and they voted with their wallets. Um, and that's why they made it. That's why they probably made it standard legal. I would have preferred if they had left it as a small set. I don't like the gymnastics that they're having to do to accommodate this set with respect to the weird naming of cards on Arena. I don't like the fact that they're like, oh yeah, drafting. There's that 4-person draft pick 2 format that totally is a cool new thing that we're trying out and not a complete hack that we just came up with because this set isn't really meant to be drafted. Um, that just like it feels like they tried to fix a problem and it's very glaringly obvious that they weren't able to get there.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, kudos to them for trying to fix a problem and recognizing when something didn't work. Like, I like that voting with our wallets actually seems to have made an impact.
yeah,
But also, it's really weird that at the Pro Tour next month, at the end of this month, after Spider-Man releases, it's not the draft format for the Pro Tour. They're using Edge of Eternities.
yeah,
That's saying something.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. It's just like it's okay. The rares are fine. Okay, I do think that there's like 44 cards though with the out of the was it the 200 cards in the set to there's 44 cards with the name Spider in it in the name. I think we might actually start running into a problem like if several of these cards become tournament viable, like having problems with just like Spider everywhere. Um
Sure.
yeah, and as was pointed out, it's the official name. It's Spider Dashman. It's the official name of the set is Magic the Gathering. Pipe Marvel's Spider Dash Man. So, I anyway, I think some of the cards are cool. I think many of the commons have a jarring modernity to them. Just a you know I'm not gonna make some jokes, but yeah, I think they're just kind of plain and just and they're boring in a way or jarring in a way that like the Avatar they have the cabbage merchant. Okay, That is actually, just like a guy on a cart selling like food. That's something that happens in the real world. That's very modern and mundane, but within the context of the Avatar universe, it's somehow acceptable. And I can't quite put my finger on why, but it's sort of like he's like a medieval merchant selling cabbages from a cart as opposed to a hot dog vendor
Well, okay, I know
selling.
nothing about Avatar except for
Yeah.
the fact that they destroy his cart multiple times throughout the series. That's like the
Yes.
one thing I know. So it
Right.
makes sense there. That makes way more sense. If Spider-Man kept destroying the same guy's hot dog cart, I think you'd be better about hot dog cart being in here.
Yeah, if it was like every time Spider-Man went swinging through a street, there was a guy that got his hot dog cart destroyed, and just the tepid hot dog water went spewing all over the place, and it was a recurring theme. That would be funny.
I guess it's interesting also, and this is kind of the last little bit that I'm going to philosophize about this, but it is really fascinating that this set is releasing both in paper as Spider-Man and on Arena as Through the Omen Paths, because it's the first time I think we've had a direct mirror of a Universes Beyond set where like they went through the effort of the art direction, the naming, all that stuff at the same time of release. Because when I was looking through the Omen Path set, suddenly some of the cards that felt really weird just felt more like Magic, more correct because they
Mm.
had that fantasy vibe on them. Like Hot Dog Cart was just like, a thing of wares that you'd pick up and it just suddenly felt fine, even though it was the exact same card, just it wasn't called Hot Dog Cart. I don't know. It's a weird
I
thing.
can- Well, if I give an inverse there though, the through the Omen Paths like universe for this set is kind of horrifying because of how many spiders are in it. Because every single spider hero has become some kind of dude who like controls spiders or something like that. It's like just full of spiders
Yeah.
because nothing else makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. All right. Since Charles isn't here, I guess I'm going to wrap things up. Anything else for the good of the order before we wrap up the release notes?
No.
No,
CJ, got anything
I guess
else?
I'll
CJ,
say,
got anything to
yeah, I
plug?
was gonna say thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was fun. It was good to be back for just a brief time. You guys know this, but I think you've all done a fantastic job in my absence. I think you've just really been killing it. So um, keep up the good work.
Charles
Things
was
to plug? No.
very upset when
He was.
Who?
Charles,
Oh,
when because he had to
yeah.
miss this episode. So when we were talking about like, okay, Charles isn't going to be here, who are we going to get? And I think in the chat I said, I have a terrible idea. Let me go see if I can make it happen. And then I
Yeah.
run off, and everyone's like, or both Marcos and Charles are just like, I'm kind of terrified and excited to see what he comes up with. And I come back
Yep.
and I was like, I got CJ Shrader. And Charles is immediately like, no, I'm going to miss that.
Well, if y'all ever need somebody to just be awful and stumble through, um, I guess let me
Dude,
know in the future.
Dude, get out
I
of
kept the
here.
old mic,
okay,
even though I'm not
it's
using it.
it's been 7 years. Okay, this stuff does atrophy, but you
Sure
you
does.
you you picked up. I mean,
You held your own, man.
yeah.
You absolutely did. Like, I will agree with the sentiment that Charles had. Like, it was quite a delight to hear that I was going to get to record with you because your judge path and my judge path kind of like came up and dropped off like at a kind of inverse. I think you were fading
Mhm.
out as I was starting to come in. I think you and I have only ever worked like one event together. I don't even know if you remember. Well, I'm sure you
No,
remember the
I wouldn't
event because it
remember.
was a dumpster fire. It was Charlotte.
I don't even remember that. I remember none of it.
Yeah.
None of it.
I remember.
The GP Charlotte that exploded into like a 7 hour delay or something crazy like that.
There were two
Nope.
Charlottes that did that.
Oh, there were two Charlottes.
There
Yeah,
were
there
Yeah.
were
two
two
Charlottes that
Charlottes
did
that
that.
did that.
Yeah.
It's funny
Nope.
that it
Nope.
happened
That's
twice.
yeah. That's the nice thing about retirement. It's all faded away. I remember an event where I ate two Waffle House waffles, and that's about it. That's all I got.
Some judges were actually talking about that just the other day about a
The
PTQ that
Waffle
you
House
ran that
PTQ.
had waffles that you guys ran just for waffles.
That's funny. What?
You and
No, it was a
Zittimer.
PTQ. Yep, me and Zinnemer.
Well, either way, it has been an honor to record with you and a genuine blast. And legitimately, I'm very surprised at how quickly just kind of went right back into it and like jumped into the intervening if. That was all fantastic. So I hope our long-term listeners out there are geeking out as much as I have been internally this whole episode. But with that, that is our episode. Join us next time as we talk about another Crunchy Rules thing that spawned from our L1 episodes. Or maybe we get CJ back to list out all the layers to us again to motivate us to actually record those episodes. Maybe. We'll see. I don't know. Something awesome and rulesy will happen next time, I promise. Until then, you can send us an email at judgecast@gmail.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on BlueSky at judgecast.bsky.social. And on Twitter at JudgeCast. Don't forget to check out our show notes for these links and more, including our YouTube channel where you can find this podcast and our series of L1 Essentials videos that we've been releasing. And while you're at it, hop onto our Discord server for judges new and old, fans, and anyone who supports the judging community. Take it, CJ.
All right, yeah. First off, I really like the Discord. You should join the Discord if you're listening. It's fun. But I'm CJ Shrader. I keep it fair.
I'm Marcos Sanchez, and I keep it fun.
I'm Bryan Perlman, and I do something. If a player does, doesn't, or can't affect, or a player may do something. I'm not going to read the rest of it.